yesterday. She is dead.
While most of America in the late 1970s was mired in recession, one paradise was booming. But Miami, Florida's relentless march of progress, came at a heavy price. Griselda Blanco would admit to running a massive narcotics ring, conspiring to import and distribute literally tons of cocaine into the United States. She's accused of ordering dozens of murders. I was surprised that it was a woman. Hard to fathom. We were all surprised that a female godmother was responsible for this much violence, could be this evil. The Cocaine Queen, Griselda Blanco. Griselda Blanco is perhaps the greatest female drug lord in history. In the following years, he withdrew from the criminal world, but was killed by one of his old enemies on the way to the butcher. You will watch his interesting life story here. A legend was born in the heart of Medellin, Colombia. Griselda Blanco is a name that will echo in the annals of history as one of the most infamous drug queens the world has ever known. Born in 1943, Griselda Blanco grew up in the modest town of Medellin, but her childhood was anything but ordinary. Raised by a harsh and abusive mother, Griselda experienced a world of violence and cruelty from a young age. When the ransom did not come quickly enough, Griselda made the chilling decision to shoot the young boy dead. As Griselda grew older, her path led her in. Griselda went down a dark path when she was only 11 years old. She kidnapped a child, demanding ransom from the victim's family. As Griselda grew older, her path led her into the world of crime. She would become known as the cocaine godmother and create a drug empire like no other. Griselda Blanco fled her war-torn homeland in 1974. While she started at the bottom of the drug trade, she would become one of the leading distributors of cocaine for the infamous Medellin cartel. Medellin is a beautiful city now, and it is, unfortunately, thanks to drug money. Pablo Escobar and a few of the great Colombian kingpins had so much power that they had politicians and police and the federal police on his payroll. They think they're invincible. Pablo Escobar wasn't for Griselda Blanco. There would be no Pablo Escobar, period, bar none. One of the reasons that I so like Griselda Blanco de Trujillo is she shows you where women's rights are. You think there isn't a woman who can compete in the tough and rough world of drug dealing? Go and look at Griselda and she'll straighten you out very quickly on that. She broke the glass ceiling in terms of female drug traffickers. She was somewhat of a visionary. She knew that the market for cocaine hydrochloride was starting to expand in the United States. She saw an opportunity and she took advantage of that. At the height of Griselda's reign in Miami, cocaine use was rampant. It's estimated that thousands of illegal Colombians were living and working within the billion-dollar drug industry there. You're talking about a time where it's wide open, and you got every Tom, Dick, and Harry trying to establish a name for themselves, you know. Our goal is to break the power of the mob in America, and nothing short of it. We mean to end their profits, imprison their members, and cripple their organizations. Ronald Reagan actually declared war on drugs in South Florida, sent a special task force down, flooded this area with federal agents who said, "This is like throwing a dart at a board. This is the easiest thing we've ever seen to make arrests. Come on, they're all over here." South Florida cannot be a haven for criminals, for sophisticated and organized drug traffickers. It's the largest effort the federal government ever made in modern times. To have to intervene in that a region, a city, an area, a county was out of control. There were so many ways that the system was being bought and manipulated that if the federal government had not come in as the cavalry, it wasn't going to get cleaned up. In many ways, Griselda Blanco built this town. In the late 70s, dealers like her put their cocaine profits into banks. The banks, in turn, loaned that money to businesses, home buyers, and developers. There are thousands of properties worth more than $1 billion that have been bought with illicit money in South Florida. There are many stories of cash green money being brought to homeowners and agents in suitcases and paper bags. Condominiums shot up like weeds, and just overnight, it just changed the landscape of the city. After over 10 years of intense investigation, Miami and Metro Police say they have enough evidence to pin the 1982 murders of 3 Dade County people on this woman, 51-year-old Griselda Blanco. If she was not one of the most prolific traffickers in the Miami area, she clearly was one of the more violent. Prosecutors had her former henchmen lined up and ready to testify against her. We transported her from federal custody to state custody in 1994. 1994 to 1998 was spent basically deposing all the witnesses that would be testifying against her, which turned out to be an extremely lengthy process. Over those 4 years, the government's case collapsed in scandal. There was a problem with Jorge Ayala, who was our star witness against her, her #1 hitman, who became romantically involved with one of the secretaries at the state attorney's office. It was all over the Miami Herald. The state attorney's office was embarrassed. They had to fire several people. Rivy basically did a great job at botching the whole case by having phone sex with the secretaries. Eventually, the decision was made by the prosecution that the key witnesses had been compromised to the point of and affecting his credibility on the stand. Deals were made, and she ended up pleading guilty and essentially received a 10-year sentence. Some people say this was planned, that this was Rivy's way of redeeming himself. For initially snitching Griselda out, it was like this grand scheme. It did work out to Ms. Blanco's benefit in the end. They have her under the Super Kingpin Act. They can put her away for life in prison, a pine box sentence. It's the equivalent of BUS. She started a pattern that would follow her through her criminal career. Oh, her money, but couldn't pay. She'll kill you if she owes you money. She'll kill you. God knows what she'd do to a boyfriend if he didn't bring her flowers. Speaking of lovers, the much older Carlos Trujillo started dating a 13-year-old Griselda and spent the next 5 years teaching her the ins and outs of people trafficking. By 19, she had married him and bore 3 sons. Then Carlos died, teaching her the ins and outs of people trafficking, from forging passports to sneaking across borders. Suddenly and suspiciously from liver failure, guess he got the wrong flowers. In any case, he had played his part, so it was time for her to get a new lover, a new gangster, a new pawn piece on her chessboard. Her next squeeze was Alberto Bravo, a cocaine smuggler. This is how she entered the drug world. But was she a born criminal, or was it circumstance? The scant information on her early life suggests there are reports that the sexual assault from her mother's partner is why she ran away to be on the streets. It is possible that her life may have been different if she'd been dealt a better hand, or was there something in her soul that could not be fixed? No doubt you have your own theories to share in the comments section. In any case, cocaine sales were not what they were back then, not until Escobar hit the scene years later to make it the commodity it was. But before Pablo, there was Griselda. She saw potential and devised a way to overhaul Bravo's small-time business from piddling profits to $1 million empire in America. In 1973, they relocated from Medellin to her new home in the Big Apple. They say if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, and for sure Blanco and Bravo hit the big time. They already had an infrastructure of dealers in place, but it was when they figured out how to import mass quantities that she shot up the underworld hierarchy. Her idea, create lingerie with hidden compartments so her Colombian mules could hop borders by flaunting their sexuality. All in all, her drug network was raking in $80 million per month, and that was back then. A quick bit of napkin math would mean she was making the equivalent of between 250 to 300 million bucks in today's money. So where did that money go? on a luxury lifestyle and parties so hedonistic that even debauched Hollywood elites and Silicon Valley playboys would blush. Blanco was a woman in a man's world, but that's what gave her the edge, and it was her edge that helped her play catch-up with none other than Pablo Escobar. You see, Pablo had been squeezing in on her territory for some time, like a fat uncle at the family's barbecue buffet when Granny brings out another tray of deep-fried shrimp. But Griselda knew that she had to be twice as tough as the toughest man, so she hatched a plan that would be the fuse to ignite that dynamite known as the Miami drug war. In 1979, a truck modified with bulletproof panels and loaded with Colombian gunners headed towards a liquor store in Daytona Mall. Upon springing their drug rivals, they opened fire and assassinated them in broad daylight, just as the Black Widow had ordered. This mix of speedy, violent bravado with technical wizardry was to be Blanco's trademark. Soon, she streamlined her drive-by hits into what is now known as the Sicario, 2 hitmen on a motorbike, one to turn the throttle and one to pull the trigger. By the end of her criminal career, she was linked with at least 200 murders, which means more than likely there were even more bodies than even she remembers. But it wasn't just her enemies who feared her attacks. Her own side was also spared no mercy. One time in the 1970s, Blanco and Bravo returned to Colombia to avoid heat from American police investigators. However, she soon suspected that her own husband had been stealing money, her money. So, she blew him away. No amount of flowers or chocolate could stop the Black Widow from living up to her name. A third husband was no better. Dario Sepulveda had a son with the mother of cocaine, but when they divorced, he took their child when they disagreed over custody. Needless to say, making her son Michael fatherless wasn't a concern when it came to getting what she wanted. But in a truly gut-wrenching turn, an attempt to assassinate one of her own enforcers ended up with the man's 2-year-old child catching a stray bullet. Reports say that Blanco was more than happy to have an innocent infant die in the crossfire if it meant getting her enemies. Is it any wonder she never became a babysitter? That all came to a crashing halt in 1985 when Blanco was arrested at her home by the DEA. A case against her had been mounting for years, and now they finally had enough to put the bracelets on her, though obviously not the bracelets the lavish Blanco was used to wearing. She was found guilty for her hand in her drug empire and sentenced to 15 years. But the murder charges against her fell through when a key witness, one of her former hitmen, was caught in a phone sex scandal with secretaries from the prosecutor's office, and you thought your workplace had gossip. She continued to run her empire while incarcerated, and given how expensive prison cigarettes are, you can blame her. She was released in 2004, having completed her sentence and deported back to her home city of Medellin. According to her surviving son Michael, she tried to turn over a new leaf. She became a born-again Christian and entered the world of real estate, proving the only thing worse than a drug lord is an estate agent. Naturally, plenty of people were skeptical about these claims. Were her regrets sincere, or was she trying to own her reputation now that her bloody illegal empire had crumbled to the ground? We won't be able to know for sure, because in a twist of irony, Blanco brought about her own death. On the night of September 30th, 2012, Blanco and her pregnant daughter-in-law went to the Cardiso butcher shop on the corner of 29th Street. The 69-year-old ex-convict was perusing the counter and about to purchase $150 worth of meat when a motorcycle pulled up, just like how she had first conceived it. The motorbike contained 2 people, a driver and a shooter. Pop, pop, 2 bullets entered the back of her skull, and the assassins disappeared into the night before her body hit the ground. How fitting, then, that the little criminal from the slums of Medellin would die from her own invention in the very same city. Of course, her killers were never found, whether that was because rival gangsters covered their tracks or police investigators didn't care is for you to decide. If you have a theory, let us know in the comments below. If you'd like more content on fascinating figures like Blanco, be sure to leave a like, and don't forget to share this with a fan of criminal history. As always, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time. Ciao.